Perfect. Thank you, Gabi. So on page 19, Ois Hey, we're going to go through some Chassidic terms that we had in this Ois. Maybe I won't do all of them because some of them are not that common that you have to know them. We'll do 57. More the Chushbana.
I wrote Master of Accounting.
You're right. So what does that mean? If we'll be talking about Gashmis, it would mean bookkeeper or an accountant. So what accounting are we talking about?
Doing budgeting.
Right, a ruchnizik accounting, making a cheshbon on nefesh. So what does it mean by the word master of accounting? It means that just like there are people who say they mastered halacha, they mastered the Gemara. This is a person who mastered the skill of making a true, honest accounting. That's one interpretation. But there's also another thing that it's not the literal meaning, but it's the way Chassidim used to say. There's another message hidden here that you make the accounting like a master, which means that if an accountant comes to your business and he sits down and makes all the accounting, and he calls in the owner of the business, I want to let you know that you just, this quarter of the year, you had a loss of $500,000. And the owner goes pale, $500,000. He's shaking. How am I going to continue the business? How am I going to survive? What did happen? Why is it? The accountant is very calm. Why? How could it be? The accountant is the one that made the whole cheshbon. He's the one who's first aware of it, and he's totally calm. And the other guy is getting all hysterical. The answer is because he's the owner. So that's what it says. You should make the accounting like the master, like the owner, not like a bookkeeper coming to make someone else's accounting. 58. Ur HaTorah. Good morning. Thank you. What does the light of Torah mean? Versus what we just say Torah. What?
It affects you.
That's the effect. But what is the definition of Ur HaTorah? You're right. The effect comes from the Ur HaTorah. The Ur HaTorah means, any suggestions? Any guessing? What?
Hasidus.
The
Hasidus.
Hasidus helps us see the Ur HaTorah. Ur HaTorah means the godliness in Torah, the light that's in Torah. 59. Araisa Mechachma Nafkus. What does Araisa mean? Mi Chachma.
From.
Good morning.
Oh, comes
from Chachma. In other words, what is the Torah? It's Hashem's Chachma. 60. Now the word Chachma stands for Koyach Ma. What does that mean in Chassidus?
like openness.
What?
Openness.
Openness. Not exactly.
Bittel also.
It's bittul. Koyach Ma means bittul. The reason why it's bittul is because it alludes to the words in the Chumash where when the Yidden came to Moshe and Aaron and complained to them, why is this way and why is that way? He said to them, Nachnu ma, what are we? It's Hashem that does everything, and Hashem is in charge, and He makes everything happen. So why are you complaining to me? So ma is alluding to that, like ma, what am I? I'm nothing. 61 is Aramaic, as Iris Garma. It was a tough one to remember. but it means it makes itself small. So it's another word of saying a person who has bittul. 62, chumri v'gas. What does the word chomer mean? Chomer.
Isn't
What?
body?
On the like arrogant?
No. Different definition. What?
Body?
Body. Also not. Don't mix it up with chamor. That means a donkey.
Right.
Homer means materialistic. Chumri means materialistic. I mean, the word chomer alone could mean just material. Someone will say, had to give out a lot of material for people to study a certain subject. They would also use the word chomer. But when it says chumri with the yud at the end, it means materialistic, meaning in terms of spirituality, materialistic. And gas means coarse, materialistic and coarse. That's describing a person's yesh. Number 63, bitushim. That's the word that's used when it's talking about how we have to crush the arrogance of Nefesh Bahamas. 64 is found in Tanya, but let me see if you remember. Kamaimer Rav Mesifta.
It's something about like the body being like a big piece of wood or something.
That is related to that. That is the statement related to this. But what do these words mean? Maimer, what's Maimer from the word Amira? It's a statement of Rav Mesivta, the head of the yeshiva. Which yeshiva are we talking about? In Shamayim, there's a Mesivta, where tzaddikim are studying Torah. And just like down here, there's a Rav Mesivta. Over there also, there's a Rav Mesivta. And he said this statement about the wood that you're talking about. And that's number 65. The long quote, the quote is that if a block of wood, if a log doesn't catch fire, then you need to break it up to smaller pieces and then it'll catch fire. Same thing with the guf. If the guf is materialistic and coarse, and as a result of that, the fire of the neshama isn't catching, has to be broken down, and then it'll catch. And the breaking down, so years ago, it was literally the self-mortification that they did. Today, we don't do anything related to that, anything that has to do with weakening the guf, but it means to sort of break the arrogance of the Nefesh Bahamas. $67, yeah, that's should be pretty common for everybody.
Elevating the stars.
Right? The Avodah of elevating the sparks. 68 and 69. One is Eretz of Kedusha, and one is Eretz of Umazah. Eretz of Kedusha and Eretz of Klipa. So what's the Eretz of Kedusha in Avodah, and what's Eretz of Klipa in Avodah? Eretz, generally speaking, means something which is low, right? So what would it be in Kedusha? What would it be in Klipa?
Bittul
In Kedusha, it's Bittul.
and Yeshus.
But then it wouldn't be Eretz if it's Yeshus. Eretz means low.
The negative bittul.
Negative Bittul. By the way, that's also true. If a person is putting themselves down to the point where they have no self-esteem, that's a negative Bittul. But in this Maimer, that actually is brought down in other Maimarim. In this Maimer, it says something else. Is Eretz means when a person degrades himself by getting his pleasure in life from things that are lower than him, and he's lowering his standards. 70, Bechir HaNivroim. Bechir.
You choose.
Okay, and Nivroim. at least you got the first word. Yeah, right, means the most chosen of the creation. Hashem created a world with 4 elements, 4 levels: inanimate, plant life, animal life, and humans. And humans are the most chosen of the entire creation. And how degrading it is when the most chosen of creation lowers themselves to become like an ant or an animal or a vegetable or something which is lower than themselves. 71, I don't think we have to explain that. Medaber, Tzameach, and Chai. Medaber is the human realm, human kingdom. Tzameach is the plant kingdom. Chai is the animal kingdom. 72, Tzad HaHergel. What is Hergel in Hebrew?
Habit.
Which?
Habit.
Habits, right? Mitzad or Avodah. So the opposite of Hergel is Avodah. In other words, if I do something out of habit, even if it's a positive thing, but I'm just doing it out of habit, good morning. And Tzad Avodah means I'm not doing it out of habit, I'm doing it because I'm working on it and I'm making this happen. Tikkun HaMoichem, to correct the mind. What needs to be corrected in the mind? What would be bittul in the mind?
Knowing that you can't know, it's too much to always be under meaning.
That's true. In fact, he explained that that's what a person could explain himself if he's having yeshus as a result of his vast knowledge of Torah. But when he talks about what needs to be corrected, of course, remember in the pasuk it says, Lech lecha, go away from your land, from your place of birth, and from your father's home. And Chassidus and Kabbalah, Abba, father, is Chachma, Moichen. So we explained it means to have my intellect should have bittul to Hashem's understanding. That I submit myself and I accept, I'm totally submitted and loyal to a ways Hashem understanding, that I want that to be my way of understanding. And we explained it means there could be certain people that they hear what the Torah says, but they say, I have a different opinion. And sometimes people say, okay, I still have a different opinion, but I'll follow what the Torah says. So they're not totally submitting themselves to the Hashem's wisdom. But a person who has bittul is actually, he wants to understand what Hashem wants, and he wants that his seichel should be the same way as Hashem's seichel. Okay, now this mimer, one of the students in a previous generation, I don't mean generation, but one of the previous years, did what I asked for, and she made a beautiful summary of the whole mimer. So on the booklet, it's on page 26. So again, it's very hard to remember a mimer and all its details, but it's also very important to remember the mimer. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, and could be doesn't apply to women, but for men, if you forget what you learn, it's committing a sin. So the question is, what happens if my head is like Swiss cheese, it goes in and out, and I just don't remember anything? So the answer is, of course, if I don't have the ability to remember, I can't control that. But it means reviewing and trying, making an effort to remember. Not like a person who learns something in Torah and then, okay, I learned this and I don't care that it should be retained in my head. How do you make it that it remains in the memory? By reviewing it. But one of the things that helps also remember things is when you bring it into a more of an akudah. In other words, if it's a lot of details, it's much harder to remember. If you put it into a nutshell, you remember the main point, and when you remember that, that helps you remember the details. So the main point here is 2 pages, okay, 3 pages, but it's still more main points than 8 pages. So I'm going to go over it together. We did this a few times, but here it's spelled out clearly. So hopefully to make things more clear. The first ice. First ice is basically 3 questions. One question is, why does it say the extra word lech lecha? The second question is, why these three details: go away from your land, from your place of birth, from the home of your father, and why in this order. And the third question is, why is the emphasis on the Eretz? Go away from this land and go to that land. Now we know the answer to all these questions. The first question, what would be the answer to the first question? Why does it say Lech Lecha, go to you?
It's your true essence.
What?
It's your true essence.
You say it in English?
Oh,
I didn't hear you
it
say.
said it's your true essence.
Right. Go to you means your true essence, to the deeper part of the neshama. And the second question about the order. So once we explain those three things about Artzachom, Malaratachom, Besavicha, now we understand the order. And the third thing we just explained is Eretz and Kedusha and Eretz of Klippa. Go away from Eretz of Klippa, which is degrading yourself, and go into Eretz of Kedusha, which is Bittul, proper Bittul. Okay, then the Maimer introduced the fact that there's two parts of the neshama. It reminds me of once at a winter program where the student said, "Well, this is interesting. Before I came, I had no idea that I had a soul altogether. Now you're telling me I have two souls." When you learn this Maimer, said now with this, each soul has two parts. It's getting better. There are two parts to the soul. There's the primary part of the soul, the etzem, and that's up the maila. And there's the lower part of the soul, and that's invested in the guf. And he explains how the two are connected. The neshama above inspires the neshama down here. And already we have the answer. Lech lecha means connect to your essence. All this is in the first ois. So the first ois introduces the idea that there's two parts of the neshama, and we have to try, and the more they're connected, that enhances my avodah, because I feel what the neshama l'mayla is fearing. Ois beis, the top line is really the main point. The time and the place to connect the two parts about neshama is during davening. And that's Yaakov saw a ladder, and the ladder represents davening, and the ladder has one end on the ground and the other end in Shamayim, and the four rungs. All this is alluding to the neshama, that the two ends to the neshama. One part of the neshama is l'mayla, one part of the neshama is in the guf, and the four rungs of the ladder represent the neshama goes through four levels to come down to this world, and the neshama has to go up four levels to get back reconnected. And these are the four parts of the davening. So that means that the place to and the time to make that connection between the neshama down here and the neshama up there, that's what we have davening for. Once I make the connection, I'll feel different later throughout the day when I do mitzvahs, when I go to work, everything that I do. But the time to make that connection is in davening. Then Ois Gimel. Ois Gimel is mainly to explain why the ladder stands on the eretz, on the earth. And the explanation is because the earth represents bittul. And in order for this to be accomplished, there has to be bittul. So bittul is the prerequisite to connect to Hashem. And bittul means to be one with Hashem. The opposite of bittul is yeshus. And then he explains that explains Amalek, that Amalek was the first to attack the Yidden, and spiritually also Amalek and Yeshus is the source of all other negative character traits. So basically, in this ois, he explains how Yeshus leads to the negative character traits. Chesed of Klippa, and Gevura of Klippa, and so on. In Ois Dalet, he continues to say that Yeshus not only leads to do negative things, but also prevents a person from doing positive things. And Yesh can't give away of himself. Then he explains that Bittul is at the core of Torah mitzvahs. And even a person that the Yeshus doesn't cause him to do anything negative, doesn't even stop him from giving tzedakah and doing good things. It's not that degree of Yeshus, but it still interferes, because if he has Yeshus, he cannot feel the godliness in Torah and in mitzvahs. That's what the Yeshus does. It interferes and doesn't allow the person, because he feels, the more I feel self, the less I feel him. That's the way it works. It's a seesaw. And therefore, the more, if a person has Yeshus, then he's not going to feel Hashem. So it's, once you think of it, and once you, if you want, in your own mind, you could just make a summary of each summary until you'll have the whole mimer in 3 sentences. And you remember it like that. Then the 5th us, the last one, is what the advice to overcome Yeshus. And he goes into all the different ways that a person could reason with his own Nefesh Habahamis and explain to him why Yeshus is something which is really not logical. And of course, one of them is to understand that everything comes from Hashem. One of them is no matter how much you've learned, Torah is infinitely deeper and greater. And really, we haven't even touched the surface. So what happens if a person realizes how little I know in Torah and gets depressed? What is that from? Yeshus or Bittul?
Yeshus.
So what should I think when I realize there's so much more to learn?
Should be happy.
What?
You should be happy.
Right. In other words, if a person feels depressed, first of all, any feeling which is negative, even if I don't know the explanation how, what, and when, but being that it's negative, that alone is the identifying mark that it comes from Nefesh Habahamis. The Nefesh Elokis would never lead to a negative outcome. Here, the negative outcome, I feel down, I feel depressed, I feel in despair. Like when I start thinking of what I do know or what there is more to know, I feel like a little fly, like an insect.
You said, what about like if you're feeling empathy for somebody and you're feeling sad as a result of that? Would that also be from a negative? How does that fit into what you're saying?
Sad is not depressed. So this is a very, very important principle of Chassidus. There's a sadness that's full of life, and there's a sadness that's lifeless, and that's depression, and that's negative. What does it mean full of life? It means it's a sadness that drives me to do something about it, and that's positive. Again, not something I should sort of be excessively involved with, but I should be more involved with the doing than the sadness. But when sadness motivates me to do something, it's a positive thing. When sadness makes me want to go to sleep, it's a negative thing. So I just want to add, I think we spoke about this a little bit when we spoke about this on Hanukkah, the idea that you're always supposed to go forward and you're supposed to grow, you're supposed to progress. So wouldn't that make a person feel depressed when they realize how much more there is to grow compared to whatever I've already done? So the answer is, what makes a person feel depressed is not the fact there's so much more to learn, and therefore I feel depressed. What makes me feel depressed is, again, it could be subconscious. I'd like to be sort of have a certain status. Like I want to be called a scholar. I want to be called a bit of a scholar. And that's what makes the person feel depressed. It's the title that I'm missing or the status that I'm missing. And therefore I feel that my knowledge is so poor that I have no status. And that's a Yesh's kind of thought process. But if a person is thinking about, I want to learn Torah because that's the right thing to do. So first of all, whatever I did learn, like you said before, gives me great pleasure. And the fact that there's more to learn makes things more challenging for me. You know, I can't do what I can do. So that's not a reason to feel down. But if a person is concerned about their status, that could be that they're thinking I'll never have the title Talmud Chacham or whatever it is. Why am I laughing? I'm laughing because I remember the story with this person who was actually an ignorant person, unfortunately, illiterate, very simple, and his daughter wasn't getting married. So he came to his rabbi and said, "What can I do about my daughter? That I can't manage to find a shidduch. Everybody's saying no." So he says to the man, "The reason is because your daughter is not a bas Talmud Chacham." So he comes home and he starts screaming at her, "Why aren't you a bas Talmud Chacham?" He so much didn't know what the word meant. Okay, and then in the last part of the Maimon, it goes into all the three things. Okay, with a few minutes left, I want to do one more thing to make it clear, because being that in the Maimon, he spoke about so many different things, I want to make clear what is the cause and what is the effect. And there's more Maimarim, by the way, on this subject, and more details that are not mentioned in this Maimar. And when we come to Purim, Purim is the time where we deal with Amalek. That's Amalek's party. So then we'll talk more about Yeshus and bring in other things. But from this Maimer, so first of all, I didn't put it down on paper, so you can either write it or remember it. But the first thing is like this: Yeshus itself, if I have to translate it, if you would be writing Webster's dictionary and you have to write Yeshus, what does it mean? It would mean an excessive sense or focus on self. That's what Yeshus is. An excessive. What does excessive mean? Excessive is a word that it can mean infinite things. It could be infinite degrees. To what degree am I focused on self more than what would be sort of proper? And that's yeshus. So it could be big, small yesh, a little yesh, a bigger yesh. In fact, it could be infinite levels in yeshus. So that's yeshus. How does it manifest? Two feelings. That's what it talks about in the Maimah. One, that as a result of that, the person feels superior to others. And the second thing is that he feels very important in his own eyes. Everything else that he mentioned in the Maimah is a outcome, and these are symptoms of feeling superior or feeling very important in my own eyes. Number one, he said that one of the manifestations is that this person wants everything. Anything that he hears about that's a positive thing, he thinks that he should have it. Why? Because a person who is very important in his own eyes feels that he's entitled to have all these different things. After all, he's a very important person, a VIP. And not only that, but when he does want something, he wants it very strongly, very forcefully. Nothing in the world could stop him. He must go as far as he can to get it. He won't accept no for an answer. And that's all part of the fact that his desire to have things comes from a place where he feels, I deserve this. That's number one. And another point he brought down was that this could even lead a person to doing an Avera, because once he has a very strong desire, then number one, he won't stop. But what about something which is an Avera? He knows you're not allowed to do it. This desire will subconsciously have an effect on his way of thinking, and it'll produce in his mind all sorts of heterim, find loopholes which are not really, most of them are baseless, but in his mind it'll make it as if it's perfectly okay what I want, and he won't recognize that it's an Avera. In other words, first of all, he'll find excuses that how it's permissible, and second of all, he would also say, even if it's an Avera, it's not such a big Avera, even though it really makes no difference. But in his mind, it's like, this is a little thing, it's not really so major. Another thing that is, again, a manifestation of this feeling superior and feeling important in my own eyes, is that therefore the person cannot tolerate anything that goes against their will. Because I am so important, how dare you, or how dare this be different than the way I want? So therefore it leads to anger. Anger is a result of not having things the way I want them. And the more a person's a yesh, the more angry they're going to be. The more a person has a bittul, the more tolerant they can be and the more accepting they can be. Once a person could lose his temper and go into a rage, then more things can come out of that. They can do damage to other people, become violent. It can even lead, Rahman al to murder, as unfortunately we know and we read about it all the time. Another thing which is a manifestation of Yeshus, again, this is in the Maimer, and these are all manifestations, is the desire that people should be impressed with me. People should, it's not enough that I feel I'm doing something right and I'm doing the right thing. I want people to recognize that and people to compliment me and people to see me in a good light. And part of that is where a person does things to impress others. What he mentions specifically is a person who becomes sort of obsessed with clothing, with looking good. Again, not looking good that I'll be comfortable, but to impress, to make sure that everybody else will be impressed with me. And of course, one of the things that Yeshus, another manifestation of Yeshus, all in the Maimer, is selfishness. Person's a Yesh, needs everything for himself. Yeah.
What about kids that want to really impress their parents? Is also issues?
That's different. That means I want to make them happy. I want to make them feel good. When I want to impress somebody by the way I get dressed, I don't want to make them feel good. I want to make me feel good. It's different. If I want to make someone else feel good, that's actually the Indian of Bittul. So selfishness, first of all, person is selfish, doesn't want to give away over themselves. So tzedakah is a struggle. To give away of myself, to give away my money, or for some people to give away their time, for some people give away their opportunity to study. I remember once, this was back a very long time ago, but I was trying to, I was a Bacham in yeshiva, and there was a new boy, and he didn't have a chavruso to learn with. So I walked over to one of our friends in the class, who he was probably the head of the entire class, very smart, and he was doing well. And I said to him, maybe you want to spend a little bit of time to learn with him, because he needs to be, someone has to help him catch up. He came in late, and he's not able to keep up with the class. So he looks at me and says, what did I come here for? I came here and said I should grow or to make other people grow? I came here that I should grow. So why are you asking me to give away my time and learn with him? But bittul is just the opposite. Bittul means I'm ready to give away my time to help another person. Not only that, I'm ready to give away my opportunity to grow more. And actually, when you teach someone else Torah and you could have used that time to be studying yourself, you could have reached higher heights in Torah study. So I'm giving up all that to help another person. But don't tell anybody, by the way, you actually gain more than you lose. Alter Rebbe says this in Tanya. In fact, there's a part of Tanya that not too many people study, is the introduction to Tanya. It is part of Chitas, but most people don't go there so much. But introduction of Tanya, Alter Rebbe brings a quote from Gemara, that if a person teaches another person Torah, then Hashem will grant that person so much success in their own learning that not only they won't lose out because of it, they'll actually gain even more. It's a little bit like the same idea as tzedakah. When you give somebody money, not only you won't lose out because of it, but Hashem will give you even greater success financially by giving tzedakah. So, but a person who's selfish does not want to give of himself. That's number one. Number two, a person who is a yesh, and because he's very important in his own eyes, this is still a continuation of that feeling. Therefore, he feels that whatever he has is because it's coming to me. How come I have money and the other person doesn't? Because I deserve to have money and they don't. That's why. So it's as if, why should I even give him the money? I have it because I deserve it and I earned it. And I really, Hashem sees me as the person who deserves to have all this money. So why should I share that with someone else? Of course, the person who has bittul does not look at it that way. He looks at it as he's very thankful to Hashem, that Hashem in his infinite kindness decided to give me this bracha, but not that I'm so great more than others. And that's why, on the contrary, Hashem gave it to me because it gave me opportunity to help other people, not because I'm better than everybody else. And after everything that he says in the Maimon, he concludes that even if a person's yeshus is so subtle that it doesn't make him feel selfish, and doesn't make him feel all these things that he says, that he gets angry and goes into a rage, and he has all sorts of Teves, all these things don't happen, it's still a problem. And the problem is that as a yesh, he's not going to feel the godliness in Torah. That's going to interfere with him feeling the godliness in Torah. He'll be learning Torah, he'll be doing mitzvahs, but he'll always be thinking about what's the benefit that I get from this, rather than feeling the godly light in the Torah. That was the first word we asked, Ora Torah, and therefore it's a negative thing. So now, after learning this mimer, where everybody is going to be the master of bittul, I don't know what else there is for us to do after we reach this point. By the way, you can also become a yesh from your bittul. I have more. They say the difference between a chassid who's a yesh and a person who doesn't learn chassidus is an arrogant person. What's the difference? The arrogant person without chassidus says, "You're nothing, and I'm really something." But the chassid says, "I know that I'm nothing, but you're a bigger nothing than me, because we're all nothing." So in fact, there could be a person who has bittul, like he does all these things, but the Yetzer Hara gets him to become sort of self-aware of, wow, I have so much bittul. But again, it's definitely better than having the kind of bittul that doesn't let me give tzedakah, makes me angry, or makes me in a rage. So that's why I said before, there are thousands of degrees of this yeshus. But one thing that's remember, the general feeling of yeshus in general is just part of being human. I feel me. I am who I am. Can't run away from that, and we don't have to run away from that. We just have to see not to be so excessively focused on that. That's all it means. Okay, so tomorrow, I don't know if we'll start the new mimer, because tomorrow's from the other Teves, so we'll probably spend a little bit of time on that. And if not, we'll start the new mimer of B'Yom Ashtei Asar, a very famous, outstanding mimer from the Rebbe, Nissen. But it's a mimer that has very fundamental meaning.